Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about keys of DBMS. The keys of DBMS and how many are there and what they do in specific. We just first of all we learn what is the importance of using those keys in the DBMS. These keys plays an important role for the efficient retrieval of the data we have been inserted or we've been used for our database. First of all, it plays an important role for identifying each of the entity differently. That means it plays a uniqueness. If we consider the it enables us to primary key enables the each of the record identify uniquely with an attribute. Now let's see how many keys are there. There are many keys available in DBMS. We consider five main keys as of now. First, it is primary key, and next candidate key, super key, foreign key, and composite key into the primary key. Primary key is useful as a unique identifier for each of the record in the table. It ensures the each record to be uniquely identified. That means for example, if we consider a employee organization, there are many employees working in that particular organization. If we want to point off a particular employee out of them, we have to use a unique identification of that person, right? In that time, we this primary key plays a crucial role as their unique identification. Here, in the employee example, employee ID plays a crucial role for the for the uniqueness of that employee. This employee key is represented by underlining the underlining the attribute of that entities. Typically, a primary key consists of one or more columns in the table, and it must satisfy the two conditions if it has to be a primary key. Uniqueness, that means each of the value should be unique, and the key should not be null. That is not null condition. That is not null condition, right? Moving on to the candidate key. If we want to identify the candidate key from a table, we can say that except primary key, remaining all are candidate keys. But we need to select which one provides an unique identification of the entity, and it is considered as the candidate key. But unlike primary key, the candidate key does not necessarily serve as a primary means of identification for a record, but it meets the criteria of uniqueness. In the employee of a, if we want to point out the candidate keys for an organization table, if we consider an employee table, candidates candidate keys would be employee ID, social security number, and his email ID, etc. Super key. If we want to tell a key as a super key when same attributes are present for multiple entities, then single attribute is selected to identify uniquely of that entity is called a super key. That means in a database, a super key is set of one or more attributes that taken collectively uniquely identify each tuple in a relation. So we can say that a super key may contain more attributes than necessary to uniquely identify each tuple. If we consider an organization, an employee table, the super keys would be employee ID. Here the employee ID is present for, let me, here is employee ID is present for one entity, and for another entity it is also an attribute, and for another entity it is also an attribute. So employee ID is the super keys. In the same way, social security number would also be the super key of that employee table. Is foreign key. A foreign key is a key which is identified as a primary key in one table and it is considered as the candidate key in other table, then the candidate key which is present as the primary key in second table and which is a candidate key of the first table. In that first table, the candidate key is identified as the foreign key of that first table. Here, if we consider, let me see, if we consider the employee table and the department table, the department ID, the department ID is the primary key of the department table, but it is the candidate of employee table, right? So in employee table, the department ID would be considered as the foreign key. Then we moved on to the final key, that is composite key. In a database management system, a composite key is that consists of many attributes as their unique identifications of a record within a table. That is, if a student entity has many uniquely identified attributes, then that student entity is known as the composite key of the table. Let me tell you here. Here, the student ID is different. Class ID would be different. It may not be different. The first name and could be the last name also can be may or may not be different. So it is we can say that a composite key is a entity which consists of unique or non-unique attributes at the same time or more than one unique attribute at the same time. If an entity consists of more than one unique attribute at the same time, then it would be considered as the composite key. Summary of the keys would be keys are very essential in ensuring the data retrieval and the data integrity, establishing the relation between the tables with the foreign key, right? We can establish different relationships with the different tables with the using the foreign keys and many other keys. Overall, keys are fundamental components of DBMS that ensures the data accuracy, consistency, efficiency in managing and accessing of data. Thank you all. This is all about keys that I could think of. Thank you.